Welcome to Terminal B's Bits and Bytes video series. We know IT can sometimes be a bit overwhelming and confusing, so we break things down into bite-sized bits and simplify IT for you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Terminal Bits and Bytes video series. And today we are here with Kyle Christensen from K7 Leadership, which is the premier small business and leadership coaching firm. Kyle's been a leadership and executive coach who isn't afraid to step outside the lines. Throughout the last 20 years, he has worked alongside teams, entrepreneurs, and executives to discover new ways of challenging the status quo to get remarkable results. And today we are here to talk about a topic that I feel is of utmost interest for people looking to make this decision, and that's when businesses should look to hire internally for their IT needs and when it makes sense to outsource. Kyle, how are you doing today, sir?
Pretty good, man. How are you doing, David?
Good. I am stoked to talk about this. You know, being an MSP provider ourselves, we really only want to bring in the right clients. You know, people think you're in sales and marketing, you want to get anybody and everybody. That is absolutely positively not the case. And it's also not the tenor of this podcast series, where we are really looking just to educate people, help them out. And then if the off chance it gets to somebody who could use our services, great. But the general point of all of this is to help guide people the right way. Feel the more we do that, the more we help everybody. And that's what we love to do in this topic here. I get asked about it all the time, and I am so stoked to talk to you about this today.
Appreciate it. This will be fun.
Oh yeah, especially with your background. I don't know if I could pick a better person to talk about this. When we were chatting the other day, I was just like, you saw me like, oh my God, people need to hear from you, brother. And so let's just start at the top, man. Let's just start at the top here. When your people are looking, when someone's growing 5 people, 10 people, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 on up, right? There comes a point in time that the owner, even maybe the operations person, needs to make a decision. I'll stop doing all the IT stuff, right? And then the decision comes. Do we go internally? Do we outsource? Is it a mix of everything? So when you reach this critical point of your company growth, let's just start here at the top. What should people take into consideration? What do they need to take inventory on?
Yeah, definitely. This is something that I probably spend most of my time with my clients combating is where the bottlenecks of your business are going and what type of scaling issues are you starting to combat? Because if you are in a fast growth organization, which is primarily what my clients are, right, you're looking at that 2 to 3x growth in a very short time frame, which means that kind of like sales, kind of like any type of system, right? We're adding fuel to the tank, but that means I also need rubber on the road. And if I'm putting rubber on the road, I need to make sure I have enough rubber to compensate how much I'm driving.
Right.
And when you're doing this, what ends up happening is a couple things. One is obviously recruitment, operational type challenges. But like you mentioned, it also becomes a matter of personal capacity. Now, a long time ago, I had one of my mentors tell me, they gave me this quote and it's stuck with me forever, which is good leaders spend time to save money, but great leaders spend money to save time. And I can't lie, the 9 times out of 10, when I start working with a business owner or a CEO and they're going, hey, how can I grow faster? When we start to do exercises to really learn all of the players that are on their teams, what is very common once we get all the seats and accountability that exist in a company is the owner or the one manager or 2 managers that are on their team have more faces in every seat in their organization than humanly possible, right? Because they're spending their own time to save themselves money, right? If I sit in 12 seats, I'm saving myself like $50, $100 an hour, whatever it breaks down.
And sometimes you have to, right? Sometimes
when it's grassroots, right? When you're hustling, you're coming out of a garage, you're trying to bootstrap everything. Yeah, you do need to. But that trait does not scale. But the problem though is you condition yourself to thinking that is how it works, right? It's work harder, not smarter. But when you look at organizations that grow extremely fast, the trait that they typically have, and that's very common, is that they are able to get things off their plate fast enough, and they have a strategy and plan to getting things off their plate. Now, in terms of IT, it's interesting, and I've had the fortunate experience of working with both IT businesses and traditional small business, but mostly professional services. And what we really commonly find is that either one, like you said, the owner's doing the IT. Two, it's like the son of the owner or, some guy down the street. Or three, it's completely neglected. And I don't know if you run into this at all, but what's funny is that what I've seen in a lot of my clients is you start to talk to the team, right? And at that point, they're like 15, 20 employees. And you start to look around the room and they have old computers that are slow. They have systems that are just completely decentralized, right? And you can't keep track. I did a cost analysis with one client one time where they had something like 40 or 45 SaaS apps and didn't even realize that they were paying for all these. And only half of them were really adopted. Because we're in an age of SaaS right now where all you do is sign up for a free trial and it's $4 a user.
Mm-hmm.
And who's keeping track of all those purchases? So it really starts to grow into this issue that we don't even think of just help desk, right? IT, my computer ain't working, so come and fix it. But what you're starting to see is all of these now additional business applications, these line of business applications that really start to suck even more time away from you and your team. And one of my clients, he uses the term click rate efficiency. And the whole idea really is that how efficient, how many clicks does it take for your employee to perform a transaction? And if we can reduce that, or reduce the headaches from help desk, or reduce the headaches from decentralized SaaS applications, what profit does that actually generate? Right? It's not just total expense. Now, some ways there are efficiencies and ROIs in this.
Now, on that note, though, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I just want to give a pardon to everybody listening to this with their red face being embarrassed that that's them. Because, I mean, how can you know when it's time? How can you know? And because you have to reach to that point. So I just want to interject and say, anybody who's listening that is just like, yeah, that's me. Like, don't be embarrassed, don't feel bad. Like, everybody has to get to that point until they start taking those efficiencies into consideration, because they sneak up on you. So anyways,
completely do. And it's not just IT, right? There's financing. Like, I see accounting a lot of time having the same issue of, I manage my own books. And the next thing you know, right, you look at your AR and your AP and you're going, I'm not categorizing this stuff correctly. Yep. I mean, it's not just IT with this. This is just part of being an entrepreneur. This is part of being a business owner and being a CEO or an executive, is that you have things in your business that won't stay status quo. You do have to keep up with maturity and growing into some of these things, or realizing that I am no longer the expert. I am no longer I'm outside my ability to make decisions. And either one, I need to spend time to learn how to do things, or two, I just need to pay someone else to do it. Right? Yep. We've all heard that adage of great leaders have a team of people that are smarter than them. And that exists for a reason. I can't be the expert of everything, because there's also that other adage, which is jack of all trades, master of none. And that's what a good entrepreneur is. I know how to hustle. I know how to get things done. I know how to roll up my sleeves. But when it comes down to expertise to really get to that next level, I got to be comfortable handing it off. There's actually a great book called Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. I make all of my clients read it. It's a fantastic read about this whole idea that you need to worry about as you grow and you scale, who is going to be performing those tasks. And it is that who that figures out the how it will be done. And with IT, I don't know about you, David, but things like this didn't exist 10 years ago. No one could have foreseen how powerful that something like this would be. Now, every single one of your employees has them in their pocket. How do you manage that? Why do I need to manage it? Is that even a thought that I ever have? And in 5-10 years from now, what the hell is it going to be next? So to me, when you ask the question,
opening a lot of windows, a lot of trap doors, with the efficiencies that come, there's pros and cons to pretty much every single thing in life. So the efficiency of technology has now opened us up to the threats of technology, right? And that's part of IT is efficiency, part of it is security, obviously operational infrastructure, which goes back again to efficiency, right?
Oh, I have a friend. His name's Wes, and he's one of the premier cybersecurity experts. And it's funny in talking to him, the whole idea of viruses and hackers, and back in the day, you'd go to Best Buy and buy Norton antivirus for your computer. That's not how data is being leaked anymore. That's not how data is being breached anymore. And he was telling me that most of the time, he coined it or told me the term. It's mostly social engineering is how people are being breached and data being lost. It's because of devices like these that now they're just finding a way to call your fuser and say, "Hey, I am so and so. Want to give me your password?" And
Your Amazon
they just give it up.
Purchase didn't go through.
We
All of
hear
it.
that story about how grandma got a phone call from Geek Squad and gave them their information for her checking account.
Yeah.
It happens
Yep.
at the business level, and it's a lot easier to accomplish because, right, it's our users are our most vulnerable asset now. Now, you asked the question, David, about how do we start to know when IT becomes a necessity?
Mhm.
And when do we, I think you were kind of trying to lead, because I get this question a lot from my clients of when do I decide to invest into someone managing this for me? And right, my clients will ask me IT or bookkeeping or HR or any of those other facets, right? Payroll. And this is where things come to a cost analysis perspective. And one of the things that I really work with a lot of my clients on is understanding from a financial perspective how to budget and forecast the needs of your company, what you can afford to have predictive net income. Now, on average, I did some research before this call. Small businesses under 50 users spend on average 6.9% of their fiscal gross revenue on IT. Now, that could be IT guys, that could be outsourcing, that could be monitoring, AV, all these little extra things that go into your technology stack, right? So it's not just the IT portion. Now, 6.9% is quite a bit when the national average for gross profit is around 35% of your total revenue. So what I did to help this conversation was, illustrate really from a scaling perspective, when that right time is to start thinking about when do I need IT? When should I have my own IT guy? And at the same time, when is it actually smarter to outsource? Because I think that becomes the next important question, especially with the expertise that I know that you and Greg from Terminal B have kind of started to really change the industry on. And do you mind if I kind of share?
No, I absolutely love where you're going with this. And just to kind of recap where we're currently at right now is, we're just having a conversation about just the idea of, in general, anything, HR, accounting, in general, you need to release the reins, right? Then that leads into the various nuances. And here we're talking about IT today. So on that note, on that note, we're talking about when the point comes where, and you could chat about that, when you need to have somebody else do it, hire somebody, outsource it, right? So there's a decision to be made. First things first, when do I start doing those actions? Then we're going to get into what you're about to show is the cost benefit analysis of one or the other. And then after you do that, Kyle, I would love your take, because then it becomes more of a conversation and not data, although the data is important, of what kind of potentially love to dip into. And I'm asking this question ahead of time so you can incorporate it with what you're about to show, is maybe what kind of organizations, what kind of activities, what are some indicators when you need to, nope, Terminal B is the best company in the entire world, but you know what? They're not right for you. You need to hire internally. So I would love for you to touch on that as you're showing these numbers, if that's fair.
Well, yeah, totally. Because there is also economy of scale as well, right? Where outsourcing does start to show its own limitations.
Correct.
And that's where I think Terminal B also has some really cool things as well, because, right, there is that level to where how can we, co-manage some of these environments, and to that point where I can have 2, 3, 4, 5 IT people on my own staff. Now, long story short, let's just have a quick point. You should outsource your IT, and not saying outsource, but someone should be managing your IT other than you as the owner or CEO as soon as possible. You should not be spending your time making sure that the lights stay on, that the computer's connected to the internet, and that your employee is using the tools correctly. Why? That is a cost to your business. That employee should be at their desk working as much as they can. And honestly, from a utilization perspective, they should be doing their job and not worrying about, can the tool do their job? A carpenter wouldn't work without a hammer, right? A welder's not going to work without some type of a cutting machine. A CPA is not going to work without some type of QuickBooks Access or Ledger software. So you need to make sure your employees have operational tools, which this day and age is a computer connected to the internet. So I kind of want to put that out there, and I would recommend this for finance. I'd recommend this for HR. You as the owner need to focus on the direction of the company, and the company is moving forward and profitably. That's it.
Gotcha.
Now, going into the question of how do we start to budget this, because I think this sets a lot of questions, right? A lot of the topic is, how do I budget for IT, right? Or am I budgeting for IT, or am I budgeting enough for IT? Now, to kind of kick this off, really what I want to focus on really is just this portion right here for right now. Now, what I have here is an example is a $5 million business with about average of 42 users. This is a really healthy business, and right, this is what a lot of us aspire to get to. And through that, and a lot of this stuff is national averages, right? We talk about a 35% gross profit, which means you're spending about 65% on the cost of goods sold. Now, for those of you that aren't finance experts, don't worry about it. This will kind of make sense in a second. Now, ignoring the sales and marketing and general expenses, right? I said the average nationally is 6.9% spent on IT. Now, 6.9% of $5 million is $345,000 on IT. Now, and we all have this issue right now, right? Wages have gone up, cost of living have gone up. I'm sure, David, you have employees that are asking for ton raises, and you know that they're wanting to help pay their bills, right? So things aren't getting cheaper for us. So on average right now, I went on Glassdoor yesterday, we're spending about $125,000 in salary for a system administrator, someone that you need to hire that would be qualified, which has about a 25% national average on burden. So that's taxes, that's insurance, that's benefits, all that fun stuff. So you're spending about $137,000 just on an IT person. Kind of crazy, right?
Well,
now beyond that,
it's a specialty. It's a specialty skill set that kudos to all of you who have it. So yes,
you spent time learning your craft, just like you, the owner, spent time learning your craft. Now, in that, the IT person needs their own tools to do their job. Especially, I mean, I'm sure, David, in your business and at Terminal B, right? There's tools that we have that allow us to operate our business. That sysadmin needs them as well, right? That internal IT guy really needs it. So typically, you're going to spend on average about $2,000 for monitoring software a year, and about $1,200 to $1,300 a year on an antivirus software. Now, I don't know about you, David, but all the businesses I've worked in, there's also things like holidays. There's things like PTO, right? We have things like days off or sick days. I'm sure your business, Terminal B, right? 10 to 15 days of PTO.
And don't forget bad hires.
Don't forget bad hires. Don't forget training time. Don't forget, right, I hired the wrong person, or I have to spend time managing that person, right? There's a lot of extra downtime. Now, in that extra downtime, right, he may be taking days off, but I still need someone to cover IT. So, right, I have this contractor's fee that's very low. This is just for PTO and sick. This isn't bad hires. This isn't time to manage the person. This isn't him calling out sick or her calling out sick more than they need to. So I put a very conservative about $12,000 in there. Now, what this leaves is $193,000 to just spend on all of the rest of your IT stack. Now, while you may look at that and go, hey, that's quite a bit of money, If you think about it, that's still only about 3-4% of your total revenue to operate your business. So that could be any of the licensing you have, any new laptops, new servers, new infrastructure, right? Because as businesses, especially professional services, I've got a lot of tech, right? I might have a server, I might have a lot of data to back up, I might have all of these extra things that I need to invest in my business. And altogether, that's what makes up this 6.9% of my IT spend. Now, this, if we're spending our average 8% and 10.4% on the rest of our SG&A in our organization, the rest of our expenses, for this business and this example, that's going to be about 9.6% net operating income. So net income, really, for all case and purposes, that you put on the bottom line. Now, most businesses that I work with that want to grow quickly, scale fast, have more money for sales and marketing, and I think this is what's really key with a lot of my clients as well, right? And I kind of have some of these averages over here, is for us to scale faster, I need more net income, or I need to be able to invest more into sales and marketing, or I need to be able to invest more in my employees. And maybe I'm not at a very healthy 35% gross margin. And I think this is what's kind of key here, I think, in our conversation, David, is, a $5 million business with 42 users, I may, as an owner, may not want to spend $345,000 on IT. Now, right, that leaves a couple decisions to make. Do I spend less on my hardware or on my software that my team needs to do their jobs, right? Do I buy a lesser effective hammer or saw for my carpenter? Or do I hire a cheaper sysadmin that maybe doesn't have all the skills for the job? Now, David, kind of coming back to you a little bit, I'm sure in your business and with Terminal B, you see all day qualified and unqualified IT people.
Absolutely.
And with having those, right, there's a lot more time to train someone up to be fully competent. Would you agree with that?
No, I mean, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And, yeah, but keep going. I'll be following up here.
No. I say this on purpose because I've hired a lot of people in my own businesses in my life. And right, there's always that, I wish I could hire the right person for the job, but I'm going to be cheap. I'm not going to lie, 7 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, even with my clients, those are the employees that either, one, it takes them like a year and a half, 2 years to be fully efficient because I hired someone cheaper. Mm-hmm. By the way, that costs you money over time, right? It's a long-term ROI. Or 2, I ended up getting rid of them just because they weren't cutting the cheese. Mm-hmm. So really right now, that leaves, right, if we go back to my example over here, right, really going to, okay, well, that means I need to, how do you pick between the right tools for your employees that are generating that profitability for your business or the right IT guy to manage everything? And I think this is the beauty of, especially my clients that were outsourced IT providers, is that they can drastically reduce this to where you can have your cake and eat it too. So using the same example, I already kind of did a little illustration here, is that same $5 million business still spend that same amount on marketing and general expenses. Well, if I use some national averages, right? Because if I hire someone like a Terminal B, I'm still going to spend that $193,000 on my hardware and my employees, right? I want them to have the right tools for their job digitally. But on average, now I just took some national averages, right? Most managed service providers charge about $125 a user per month, which comes out to about $63,000 a year. And by the way, you don't need this contractor now because an outsourced IT provider doesn't take PTO. They don't take sick days, right? They're accountable to things like SLAs, meaning service level agreements of I will get to your problem within a certain number of hours, which allows me to reduce my budget now for IT and have my cake and eat it too of 5.12%, which gives me a net difference of adding $88,000, almost $90,000 to my net income.
I mean,
think about that.
No,
$90,000 to spend.
The fiscal, like, yeah, no. Oh, when I started working in this industry, had questions from various people, my dad, right? And asking, and I was like, yeah, I mean, really, it's kind of a no-brainer if to do this for some, right? So you don't need like, but it almost feels disingenuous coming from me. And I just don't want that to happen. But yes, you do not fiscally, like if people believe that you can handle the problem fiscally, it's pretty much a no-brainer. But I'm gonna act. I want to play the role here of talking you out of going with an outsourced provider, okay? Because don't tell me there's no examples of that, and don't tell me that some people do not need somebody sitting within earshot of them because they're talking to them all day long and they need intimate stuff done. They need blah done, right? And there's certain industries, like say you're a software developer, right? I mean, you're showering yourself with technical analysis and technical people, and some of them for sure can take on your IT, I would assume. So I want to play devil's advocate here, Kyle. I want you to talk people out of going with an outsourced provider. Almost like the Jeff Foxworthy. You might need a internal IT if, right? Kind of something like that. So let's play that role, because you've done a great job of outlining this, and I will tell you that information you provided those are real numbers. Those are absolutely real numbers. IT people are not cheap. System admins aren't cheap. A help desk person, somebody can reset password, just so people know the difference. You can have like a help desk type of person, and that's probably the skill level that most of us have if you've grown a business or if you're some sort of operational at all. You can kind of do those kinds of stuff because you watch the Microsoft videos and all that. But there's a higher level, and that's a sysadmin. That's what Kyle's talking about. When you reach a level where you have to make sure the symphony plays together, so to speak. Okay. So with that being said, tell me the examples and sell me that why, I'm telling you, you don't need an IT, you need to hire IT internally if what. Let's talk about that, because I want those people to do that. I want them to be successful.
No, totally. And I think it's valid, right? And I think there's an honesty and a humility to it, because there are either some verticals, like you mentioned, software development, or there are some levels to where, yes, I at this point, from an economy of scale, do need someone internally.
Mhm.
Now, I worked with a client quite a while ago now, maybe 10 years ago, where they were a financial wealth management brokerage. And they were they were trading on average $1 million every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Let me say that again, $1 million every 5 minutes.
Mhm.
Now, if you think about that in terms of trades, right? If their computers are down for longer than 2, 3, 4 minutes, they have the potential to have $5 million on their balance sheets of loss. Especially
That's a good
emergency trade, right? It's
Yes.
emergency trade, something's tanking, right? It's like Bitcoin was a couple weeks ago. It's just going down. And if my
Mhm.
computer shuts off and I'm the guy that's managing that portfolio, I'm going to be heated, right?
Yeah.
And for them, it was worth their time to hire a guy to just sit in their cubicles, sit in their office. So if that minute came down, he would be within that 2 to 3 minutes to get that computer back up and running, because it was not worth the time of loss of productivity, right? That is high stress, and there is not a single outsourced IT provider that is going to be able to have a 5-minute SLA or less than a 5-minute action to repair that computer. It doesn't matter the size of you, right? Because now it's a function of loss and risk management than it is of, saving some expenses. Now,
No,
if you can
that's a great example.
No, and it's a real life example, right? Because there are some businesses that you do have that need. Now, if you're saying, hey, I can wait a half hour, I can wait an hour, hell, I can wait a day for my computer issue to be fixed. Yeah, right? Like, you don't need to be hiring someone internally. But if time to action, time to resolution is that important to you, and you have a business justification, by the way, you hire someone like me, I'm really going to push on that point. You have a business justification. Then yes, let's spend more than the national average of 6.9%. Now, There is also an economy of scale. That economy of scale goes, right, okay, well, at what point does that, I think we dropped it down to 5.12%, right, with an MSP, turn into one person, two person of potential hire, right? Because if we think more revenue, and most of the time we talk budgets in terms of percentages, then when does that percentage turn into, okay, I can afford an internal IT guy, maybe one, maybe two, maybe three. So, of course, right, I modeled this for you as well as to kind of illustrate my point. So if we look at, let's double the size of the company, a $10 million company. Now, this $10 million company, still 35% gross margin, still 8% sales and marketing, still 10.4% on their general expenses. Well, if I hire a $125,000 employee, right? My employees, maybe let's just say they doubled for the sake of easy math. And then let's say my tools, they don't go up exponentially, right? It's not also a 2 times multiplier on my hardware expenses. It's closer to like a 1.5% when it doubles, around 289,000. Well, at this level, even with this subcontractor fee in here, now is a level to where it's even cheaper than hiring an MSP. Because then as an MSP, that $120 a user now times 84 is getting a lot closer to the price of an internal IT guy. Now, you still need to buy the tools, right? So there is going to be some investment. You are going to have to manage that person. So you need to have enough management time to make sure that they're doing the job you want. And like we kind of started to mention, this does need to be someone that's like a systems administrator, where if you're going to hire a single person, they kind of do need to be that do-all type of guy, where it doesn't matter if it's a very simple issue, my computer's a little slow, to, hey, we need a better way to operate our entire business on Microsoft 365, Azure, AWS, any of these really fancy type of technologies. So, right, if you can only afford one guy, I need to make sure I have the budget to hire that guy that can do it all.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of where that comes into play.
So you're really looking at this from less of a because we haven't really given you gave a really good example of like a business case, and that gets, I mean, we can't go through every type of business type and do justice to this. Business types can come in all shapes and industries, I'd assume. Obviously,
think of it as cost per hour. What is your company's expense per hour budget? And if you're in an industry where your expense per hour can be saved or improved for less than the cost of a person, or more than the cost of a person, excuse me, that's really the industry, right? The 5-minute example. If your business has that high of a cost per hour, then an IT guy saves you money.
That's a great benchmark, because that's going to be a big wide stroke that people can stop and think like, okay, outsourcing just isn't ever going to be for me for the most part. Potentially a situation, but for sure you have to have somebody internal, right? Now, moving along, because being a previous business owner myself, I always like, oh, this sounds good. And some people are numbers people, some people aren't, some people are more general feel and whatever. But everybody wants kind of like some sort of formula, right? Like some sort of like, at this moment, I should look into this. At this moment, I should look into that. So I'd like to conclude here on this chat, and I appreciate all the information. And we'll be sharing some of these, little resources with everybody as well. But let's verbalize it, because not everybody's a number person, right? So I'm gonna give some examples as we close up here, and then you say, if I were the business owner of X, which is what I'm going to be giving, this is what I would do. And it's going to be internal. It could start with outsourcing it all, and then move into a mix, and then mix and then blend into a mix, and then move into, no, at this point, I would really probably do everything in-house, right? And I don't know if that's ever the case on the numbers basis, but let's start here. And the other example is keep doing it yourself for right now, because you have no choice, you have no money, right? So say you're just getting by, barely making bills. I'm going to start at the very bottom, and I'm going to go to the top. You're a 2 to 3 to 4 person company. You're barely paying yourself enough to to get by to make your own house payment, right? Can I just state it
Yeah,
for
no,
you?
you're going to do
Keep
your
doing it
own
yourself.
IT.
Keep doing your shit yourself, right? Like figure it out. Okay. So now we're up into like a decent growth stage, and we're about a 10-person company. Um, and you're paying your bills, you're making money. What would you do? Your
10
company, Kyle.
people, my company, I would outsource it. Honestly, at that point, I would already
You
be
would
looking at
actually
outsourcing.
outsource it at that point. You wouldn't continue to try to get by and do it yourself.
To be
Oh, is
quite
it?
honest, I personally have done grassroots a couple of times. And I know the one thing that's been different in all my companies that I've grassrooted, it's outsource things as fast as possible. Get them off your plate as fast as possible. And you will grow as
Okay.
fast as possible. Now, if you're sitting there, it depends on your goals, right? If you're a 10-person firm
Yeah,
and you
it
want to
really
stay
does. Yeah.
10 person the next 20 years, then no, don't outsource it, right? Because then you need to really farm that income in order to make your own wages as an owner or CEO. Now, if I'm in a growth stage and I'm a 10 user firm and I want to be 20, 25, 30 users within the next year or two, yeah, I'm outsourcing it.
Okay. Now let's move into that next stage. You get to that, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50. That 20 to 50 range is kind of a company segment, right? So you're in that 20, 30,
Mm-hmm.
40, 50 range. What would you do?
It would still be outsourced.
All of it.
All of
All
it.
right.
No
50,
hesitation.
75, 100, 75, 100 growing into that range.
50 to 75 stay outsourced. I think 75 to 100, I start doing the math a little bit more because around 75 to 100, I'm probably already have hired a controller or CFO for my organization. And in that, I'm going to have a lot more financial maturity. Through that financial maturity, that is where I'm going to get really strict on budgets and really strict on figuring out what our operating costs are. And that is going to be that point where, depending on our gross profitability, I'm going to start thinking of, do I bring someone in house for a quicker time? Because as a scale, I have a lot more help desk need and a lot more tool need. And I need to counterbalance. Do I half outsource? Do I full outsource? Because I think, remember talking to you or Greg, David, right? There is some offerings, right, where it is kind of a hybrid.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of where I was definitely that's one of the answers is you do hire, and it could be vice versa. Let's just say you're, and we'll kind of close up on this thought here, because let's just say you have your cousin doing this and it's a family-owned business. Firing them isn't an option. I'm sorry, a lot of the times it just has nothing to do with money. It's just not happening. Now, that person, are they the person homegrown kind of, did their own studies and they, learn how to work the different, every time, Joe or Jane has a problem, they go to that person and they can take care of the knickknack, but that person is not qualified to make sure your cybersecurity and all of that, the infrastructure is all that's like humming, right? That person is like a help desk person. That is, you can keep them on staff and then you can outsource to the higher level part and not pay for that day-to-day stuff, because it does cost an MSP money to do that day-to-day and to staff for that day-to-day. So that's a scenario where you can keep Joe or Jane on staff, right? And do it without having to fire. On the flip side, and it could still be Joe or Jane, could still be your cousin, or it could be a friend, but they're freaking sharp and they are a sysadmin level, but they don't have the time to take care of the knickknack stuff. They're like, stop coming to me with this stuff. I'm trying to save the company, right? That person is a sysadmin, and then you could just outsource the lower level, meaning not as, just lower level tasks, still take time. So those are the two options where if you're stuck in a situation like that, right? So I just want to be very clear on that. Because we truly do want to just have good information for people, because I'm of the belief, I'm sure you're the belief, if you do good, you help people, at some point in time, those people are going to appreciate you, and then there's going to be a fit for something that you're selling that they want to buy. So we just want to put the good information out there, but there's a lot of there's the touchy-feely stuff that comes with it, and you need to understand all IT is not the same thing. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Kyle, we've talked, I think, a great deal about some really cool stuff here. I almost feel a follow-up call is interview is gonna be in order, something else in and around this. But helping people break down the numbers like that, I didn't even really expect that to be on this interview today. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it because you're giving people a benchmark in what to look for, and I greatly appreciate that. Do you have any parting thoughts for us as we tie this up?
No, at the end of the day, right, we're really here to make, and this is what I truly believe. I mean, this is why I help business owners so often grow their businesses. At the end of the day, right, we need to find a way to work smarter, not harder. And too
Mm-hmm.
often I see really good business owners just busting their humps trying to get things done. And you start to hear these things like burnout and I'm tired and I want to sell my business, right? They're not enjoying it anymore. A lot of this is to take that burden off your back. Now, yes, I do it for a fee and I make my own profitability. Well, and that's not a bad thing. That's an efficiency. I have obsessed about IT, or I've obsessed about HR, or I've obsessed about finance so that I can do it to you at a savings while also me making money. It's quid pro quo. So to me,
Mm-hmm.
it's great conversation because at the end of the day, we as business owners are finding ways to make each other money and work not as hard.
It's how the world's designed, really, at the end of the day. Everybody should be doing what they do best and and ideally what they enjoy doing the most, right? So, on that note, we will say goodbye here, but we are definitely going to be having some other conversations. This is just the tip of the iceberg of the intelligence and what you can help people with within their business. We are just talking IT today. But again, for everybody out there listening, Kyle helps out in all different areas like this to make your business more efficient. And at the end of the day, have more fun, right?
That's what it's
So,
about,
Kyle,
man.
thank you. It is. It freaking is, man. So, on that note, thank you so much, and on to the next one, my friend.
All right. Take care, man.